Hello friends, it's Fred with Wentworth CCTV, and today we are bringing you a video with content requested by a subscriber. Basically the question was, look, I'm confused. There are so many Wi-Fi standards and terms, and I just don't get the difference between 802.11g, 802.11 AC, 5 gigahertz, 2.4 gigahertz, Wi-Fi 4, Wi-Fi 6. It's all, just mind-boggling, and it's really not. It's so simple, but to understand it, we have to go back, and we have to look at how it evolved and why it evolved, and really, it's quite simple. Okay, everybody knows there's two bands. There's 2.4 gigahertz and there's 5 gigahertz. 2.4 is much stronger but slower, and the 5 gigahertz frequency is not as strong as 2.4. It's about half as strong but much faster. Okay, and devices, clients such as phones, laptops, um, you know, TVs, gaming devices. The wireless cards in those could be either of these standards. They could be 2.4, they could be 5, and there could be compatibility issues. So it's a good thing to know, and it's simple. So let's dive right into two. I'm sorry, to 1999. When this came out, we had 802.11a. Okay, if you think back to 99, there wasn't a lot of streaming. There wasn't a lot of anything. We did not have Netflix, Hulu, YouTube. We didn't have any of that stuff. So when Wi-Fi first came out, we experimented with 5 gigahertz, and 802.11a had the max capability to do 54 Mbps. Okay, 54 megabits per second. And when we say that, that is what it had the ability to do. Real time, it was probably 4 to 12. And we'll talk about the reasons for real time speeds versus maximum speeds later. So the problem with 802.11 was the 5 gigahertz band was not very strong. Okay, it was okay speed wise, but it wasn't very strong. So then in the next year, 2000. We came out with 802.11b. That addressed the strength issue, right? It was a stronger signal, but slower. It was down to 11 Mbps, real time, I don't know, 2 to 8. And again, there wasn't a lot of streaming and stuff like that, so it was functionable on the 2.4 gigahertz platform, you know. 802.11g comes along in 2003. Again, YouTube wasn't around until 2005. We didn't have Netflix and Hulu and all of this streaming stuff back then. So this was probably the first router you had in your house, okay, when we go back 15 years. And it was on a 2.4 gigahertz frequency once again, but the speed was bumped up to 54 Mbps. In the real-time speed could be, 15 to maybe 30. So we had usable internet for back then. That's why I say this is the real platform that people started liking. Okay, this Wi-Fi stuff's pretty cool. Again, when we say maximum versus real time, in a real time environment in your home at this time, you have walls, right? That's going to diminish the Wi Fi signal strength. So even though the router or access point is giving you 54, you're not receiving it, right? Um, Also, airspace was becoming an issue in 2003. We have all kinds of devices online, and most of them at this point are on the 2.4 gigahertz frequency, which is only 3 channels, 1, 6, and 11. So the airspace is starting to get congested, right? More cell phones, cellular phones, all of this wireless stuff coming out. And it was getting congested. So in 2009, that is addressed. If you notice a pattern, every time a new standard comes out, it is improving upon the previous standard and expanding capabilities, right? It's continuous improvement. That's what Wi-Fi is and technology is. So in 802.11, N came out in 2009, and now we have for the first time dual band. So a single access point or router is now putting off 2.4 and 5 gigahertz frequency. So we have the strength, the penetrating strength of the 2.4 and the speed of the 5 gigahertz. And look at these speeds. Wow. 300 Mbps on 2.4 and now 600, half a gig on 5. Now we have dual bands, we have speed. We're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere in Wi-Fi. 2009, YouTube's out there. It's already very popular. Netflix is out there. I don't think Hulu's around yet, but there's streaming going on, right? Facebook is certainly not what it is today, but it's around. And so Wi-Fi at this point is getting tremendously popular because of all the wireless devices. Um, we also talk about 802.11n. We throw in a term now, backwards compatibility. It's backwards compatible. What does that mean? Simply, it means it has the ability to go back to previous versions. So when we look at 802.11, 802b, 802g, 802.11n will be able to work with all of those. So if you have a 802.11b device, it'll be able to connect to 802.11n, right? Um, but it will only be able to work at 802.11b speeds, okay, which aren't that great, okay? So you see how this works. Backwards compatible lets it go to previous versions. Now, 2014, 802.11 AC comes out, but it's back to 5 gigahertz, okay? True 802.11 AC Wave 4 Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi 4 does not, it's not backward compatible because it's only on the 5 gigahertz frequency. So BGN devices can't connect to it when it's true AC. Now these devices are kind of tricky because when they sell them, they'll say they're dual band. Yes, they're dual band if you take it out of AC mode and put it in N mode, and then it becomes an 802.11n router. Follow what I'm saying? You're not getting the advantages of AC. True AC is only on a 5 gigahertz frequency. And the speeds continue to go up. Almost a gig now, we're at 800 Mbps. In real time, even with 800, is still at 500 Mbps by the time you get through the walls and the airspace. Um, and this was fast Wi-Fi. And the AC technology is still what we primarily used for bridges. Um, but the problem with that, what became the backwards compatibility. Okay, so we have these new AC access points up, but now we have BGNN devices on the 2.4 gigahertz frequency that can't connect to it. So we have unhappy people. I can't connect to your Wi-Fi. 802.11 AC was great if the Wi-Fi was 802.11 AC, the access point, but also the client. So we ran into a little bit of issues there. In 2019, those were addressed with 802.11ax, which is just some, I mean, it's some incredibly good Wi-Fi. This is where it's at. Wave 6, 802.11ax. We talk about MIMO, okay? Let's back up to 802.11ac for a minute because I forgot to talk about MIMO, M-I-M-O. That means multiple input, multiple output. And in layman's terms, what that means is you could have three clients, okay? Say mom, dad, and son are all on their cell phones connected to the Wi-Fi, okay? So multiple in, multiple out means we're all communicating with the access point at the same time, right? The problem with 802.11ac, or not a problem, but just the way it is it's similar to kids being dropped off at school by their parents. Okay, one car drops off a child, leaves. The next car pulls up, drops off the child. Okay, leaves. The third car comes in. MIMO is similar to that. Okay, so my cell phone is sending larger packets, big packets, chunks to the access point, right? And the access point sends it back. So that's communication. When my phone is done, my wife's phone does the same thing. It sends that large package to the access point sends it back, and then my son. Okay. So there could be, depending on the amount of people connected, delays or latency, as we call in this. Um, so in 802.11ax or Wi-Fi 6, that also is addressed because now we see multiple unit, multiple input, multiple output. MU MIMO. And basically what that means is Now we have 8 streams, okay? And multiple devices can connect simultaneously. And how they achieve that, it's similar to cell phone technology, but um, again, going back to layman terms, um, the packets are smaller. So now my phone is sending not big chunks, but smaller packets to the access point, and the access point is responding to me at the same time as my wife's phone is sending smaller packets to the access point, and my son's phone sending small packets to the access points. It's handling those fragments simultaneously instead of waiting. Now this is like a school bus pulling up to the school, right? All the kids get off together, and there's good communication. It's designed for stadiums, for colleges, for campgrounds, where you have a lot of devices connecting to a single access point. That's what Wi-Fi 6 is designed to do. The speeds also, it's dual band, so it's backwards compatible with all the previous technologies. Okay, that addresses something that was missing with AC, and the speeds are through the roof. And you'll notice here I have 524 and 1300 Mbps, um, because ingenious, that's what we put out for specs. Yes, people are going to say, Fred, you're wrong. 802.11ax is faster than that. Yes, the technology is faster. um, 802.11ax can be 3 gigs, and with the 8 streams even faster than that. I totally get that. But real world scenario, trying to explain it to my campground owners, um, realistically, um, it's going to be 500, 2.4, 524, and 5 gigahertz is going to be over a gig, 1300 Mbps. And that is amazing. And honestly, in a campground, you're not going to have, in most environments, almost all environments, you're not going to have more than a gig or more than 1,000 Mbps going to a single access point, because that type of a bandwidth is not available to the internet service provider, right? So, yes, if someone were to argue, hey, 802.11ax Wi-Fi 6 technology is much faster than what you're talking about, yes, it is. Yep, yes, it is. But the specs on our access points, in realistic speeds, this is what we're using in the presentation. But you see the evolving, and you see the benefits of Wi-Fi 6. Okay, it's dual band, it's backwards compatible with everything. Multiple unit, multiple input, multiple output. It lets tons of devices connect to it, um, and on top of everything else, we have the speed. So it's the best of all worlds. It also is set up for the future. Right now, we have 2.4 and 5 gigahertz frequencies. Um, in the future, they're talking about, you know, even more. So these access points, the Wave 6, um, can be 1 through 6. It builds for the future and builds for future expansion in the Wi-Fi. I already talked about Wi-Fi 7. So if I were purchasing a Wi-Fi today, 802.11ax is the only way to go. I've seen these in the field real time. They're amazing. So one other thing we did want to talk about, and that is the standards. Okay. To simplify the whole 811 to 11, 802.11 confusion with the lettering system. Okay. Which pretty much the Wi-Fi levels coincide with the letters, except for Wi-Fi 1 and Wi-Fi 2. Um, UC 802.11g is Wi-Fi 3, 802.11n, the first dual band one is Wi-Fi 4, AC is Wi-Fi 5, and then the new AX is Wi-Fi 6. The reason they simplified this is that these letters were getting confusing. And for the average person, for my dad, for instance, going into a store, they see 802.11g, they say B, they see AC. They don't know what the newer one is, what the best one is. The Wi-Fi numbering system takes care of that, as in, okay, Wi-Fi 6 is 6, so it's the newest. Wi-Fi 5 was before that, Wi-Fi 4 before that. It just makes it easier for the consumer and easier for the average user to understand Wi-Fi in its terms. So hopefully that was helpful. There's a subscribe button on your screen. Please click it so you are notified of future videos. We also take questions from our subscribers. This video was based on a subscriber's question. They're confused. Hey, there's BGN 146. What the hell's going on? I don't understand this. Hopefully this understands with that, and it's good content based on a question. So please hit that subscribe button, and we will see you soon in the campgrounds.